Welcome to Perfectionists Anonymous, a podcast-style channel dedicated to unraveling the myth of perfectionist living. I'm your host, Caitlin, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. I invite you to sit down, relax, and hang out with me, your supportive friend, who knows how difficult perfectionism can be and who wants to find a better way. Thank you for joining me today. Anybody can become angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person, and to the right degree, and at the right time, and for the right purpose, and in the right way, that is not within everybody's power, and is not easy. Aristotle. Greetings, fellow perfectionists. I hope you are all doing well. I just went on a brisk, cool autumnal hike, and so I feel absolutely wonderful. I would have preferred to see more fall colors, but hey, there was so much to love about the hike that I really can't fault it for not being perfect. One of the things that I especially love about hikes is how helpful they are when it comes to processing emotions. I find that hiking by myself, moving my body, and giving my brain time to sift through all of its buzzing thoughts is one of the most therapeutic things that I can do for myself, especially if I find myself in moments of quote-unquote negative emotions. Which brings me to today's episode, the second in a mini-series on the big three emotions that are, perhaps unfairly, labeled as negative by our society: anxiety/fear, anger, and sadness. Last week, I talked about the relationship between perfectionism and anxiety. If you haven't yet listened to that episode, I will link it in a card in the upper corner. Today, we are covering the second emotion, anger. In my opinion, there is perhaps no other emotion with as much stigma attached to it as anger. Anxiety and fear are stigmatized as being unreasonable, ridiculous, or illogical when they show up in situations that others deem to be so. Sadness is seen as something to be worked through as quickly as possible. But anger? Anger is scary, violent, aggressive, mean, uncontrolled, and altogether is viewed as something that should pretty much be avoided at all costs. At the very least, one person's anger is likely to make others uncomfortable. At the most, it damages relationships and makes others feel afraid. So the stigma goes, at least. Let's unpack a few things. First, just like fear, sadness, and happiness, anger is a normal human emotion. Everyone feels angry, and feelings of anger appear in our bodies for a reason. Oftentimes, anger is associated with thoughts of unfairness or bitterness. Anger may arise when you feel like you are being treated unfairly, or when you notice someone else being treated unfairly. Anger sometimes shows up when we feel threatened or judged. Anger may appear as a protective side effect, a form of emotional resilience that can cover you when you feel hurt. Essentially, anger is a warning sign to your brain and to your very person that you don't think that something is okay. It could be someone's words, someone's actions, an inconvenience, something in your environment, a system of oppression. The spectrum is wide and encompassing. And just like there is a wide spectrum of things that can cause feelings of anger, there is also a wide spectrum of the intensity of anger. Mild annoyance or festering bitterness is different, for example, than aggressive anger that leads to injurious behavior to oneself, the environment, or others. Within the category of anger, we have feelings like mad, upset, frustrated, annoyed, enraged, peeved, pissed off, perturbed, vexed, irritated, exasperated, or infuriated. Each of these variations of anger have their own nuances and their own levels. And just as with all kinds of emotions, there is a distinct difference between normal adaptive levels of anger and levels of anger that reach a frequency or intensity that impacts an individual's ability to healthily live their life. If you believe that your experiences with anger are interfering with your ability to live your life, or if your feelings of anger result in damage to yourself, your environment, or others around you, then I strongly recommend speaking to your doctor about your mental health and possible ways to support you. But today's discussion is about regular, everyday anger, the feelings of anger that we all experience, and the perfectionistic thoughts surrounding them. Because just like everything in our society, there are a lot of perfectionistic thoughts about how anger should be expressed, who gets to express anger, when anger should be expressed, and whether or not any of us should be angry in the first place. I want to stress that this is a nuanced discussion, and I may not end up covering everything. I apologize in advance for any omission. It was not intentional. First, our majority cultural systems teach us from a young age that there is a very specific time, place, and manner in which anger should be expressed. While this comes from a good intention of wanting to maintain harmony and peace, I think the messages are often expressed in very binary ways. Anger bad, happy good. Even though, as we've already discussed, anger is a normal human emotion, a sign that something feels wrong. There are so many unspoken rules about anger. You shouldn't express anger in a public place. You shouldn't express your anger to certain people, usually those in power. And you shouldn't express your anger with any outside bodily indications of anger, such as a raised voice, clenched fists, or stamping feet. The easiest and most sympathetic way that I feel I can illustrate this is to imagine a toddler who has been playing with blocks for some time. Maybe there are additional extenuating circumstances. Maybe the toddler is overdue for nap time. Maybe they haven't had a snack and are hungry. Maybe it's really hot and they are uncomfortable. The toddler is working on their block tower, trying over and over again to build the tower how they want it. They just can't get it. And then their caregiver or some other adult comes over and announces that it is time to clean up the blocks. The caregiver starts to take the blocks from the toddler and put them away, a seemingly innocuous action. But in the toddler's mind, this is entirely unforgivable. It's unfair. They were so close to building their tower and now they can't, and they're hangry and tired on top of it all, and they just can't take it. So now they're angry. They indignantly shout no to the heavens, hoping that someone out there will intervene and fix this unjust situation. They stamp their feet, their face gets red and screwy, they fall to the floor, they try to grab their blocks from their caregiver, maybe they throw some of their blocks. And how is this situation met? Usually with a forceful, angry, "Stop it. You listen. It's time to clean up. Stop screaming. Stop pouting. Clean up now." It is never directly said, but the message is, stop being angry. You don't get to be angry. Your anger is unacceptable. And when this happens often enough, in multiple settings, with multiple adults, with multiple societal messages, how could we not grow up in a culture that is terrified of feeling angry? How could we not internalize the messages that feeling angry is wrong and bad, and therefore we need to shove it down deep, trap it up, and keep it hidden? And I want to emphasize that it's easy to see both sides of this argument. First, we do need to learn to manage our anger to a certain extent. This is true. There are healthy, adaptive ways to express anger that don't result in hurting oneself or others with our words or actions. But I would argue that very few of us are ever given the chance to learn that. Because as kids, we're taught to just stop being angry, now, no questions asked. And what happens when we just try to stop being angry? when we try to stifle a human emotion that will exist in our brains and bodies no matter what we do, it festers inside us. It turns to resentment and bitterness. And eventually, it just explodes out of us, unpredictably, and usually at higher intensities than if it was just managed and dealt with in the first place. I think anger is one of the most complicated emotions for people to handle empathetically, because it has a pretty unique power of spreading like a wildfire. If the toddler is being angry and it seems like it's directed at you, it can be pretty difficult to not also feel, at least on some level, kind of pissed off. When it feels like someone is angry at you, blaming you, or judging you, it is incredibly difficult to pause, slow down, and wonder what else may be at play. The hypothetical toddler in our example doesn't actually think that their caregiver is the manifestation of all evil. They're thinking, life isn't fair. I didn't get to do what I want. I don't feel good. I think we can all empathize with that. Who here hasn't been that toddler? Who here hasn't had those feelings as an adult? Life isn't fair. I haven't gone on a date in months. I don't get paid what I deserve. I don't like how what that person said made me feel poorly about myself. I don't like being told to do something. Life isn't fair. And I would be remiss to not mention that life actually isn't fair for a lot of people. Even if we aren't talking about cosmic or situational unfairness, our majority systems are set up in a way that directly makes life unfair for Black, Indigenous, and people of color, women, especially BIPOC women, individuals with disabilities, the LGBTQIA+ community, people who follow non-Christian religions, people of lower socioeconomic status, and people who do not meet conventional beauty standards, particularly people who are plus-sized. And oftentimes, it is people with these identities, whether just one and especially intersecting, who are the least allowed to actually be angry. It only takes videos of the differential treatment of different kinds of protesters to illustrate this fact. But how does all of this relate to a perfectionistic mind? Well, long story short, all of this societal messaging surrounding expressions of anger tells the perfectionistic mind that it should be avoided as often as possible. The only anger that can be expressed is the good kind of anger, the kind that you are only allowed to express calmly and with an underlying sense of purpose and justice. Even then, this type of anger should be accessed only rarely, and you better have a really good reason for it. But this perfectionistic ideal becomes even more complicated when gender is taken into account. For people socialized as women, the good kind of anger is all that we have access to, and the other kinds are completely unreasonable. For people socialized as men, anger is sometimes the only emotion that they feel allowed to access at all. This is largely because anger has become associated with masculinity and masculine traits. Expressions of anger in sports, expressions of anger as a show of confidence or strength, expressions of anger for the purposes of building muscle, expressions of anger in war or superhero movies with male protagonists, brute strength and toughness, fighting, defending, etc. So, for people socialized as men, the perfectionist mindset surrounding anger becomes even more twisted. Anger is bad because it's sometimes uncontrolled and mean, but anger is also good because it means I'm masculine and therefore attractive. So don't be angry, but also be angry because it's the only emotion besides joy you're really allowed to express anyway, and at least it makes you a man. And again, this intersects. Expressions of anger are hard enough to swallow from men, but God forbid a person of color, a Black woman, a gay man, a fat woman, etc. express anger. So that's a lot. That's heavy stuff. Ultimately, the message is sent that anger is bad and wrong, especially depending on who you are, and that it should be avoided as often as possible. Perfectionistic brains suck in this message and hold on to it for dear life, because if there's no real right way to express an emotion, then it can't be expressed at all. but no emotion can actually be avoided. As I mentioned towards the beginning of this episode, there are actually a lot of healthy and adaptive ways to process anger and recognize the messages that it is trying to tell you. But few, if any of us, are ever given the chance to learn them. We just learn that anger is bad, so we bottle it up until the proverbial champagne bottle pops and all the anger comes spraying out. This is why anger is so often symbolized with a volcano or a bomb or some other explosive object. If we aren't allowed to process it, then explosive is what it becomes. I feel angry a lot. I have a lot of those indignation type thoughts when things don't go my way or exactly how I planned or expected. I have a lot of thoughts of resentment and bitterness and judgment. I have a lot of thoughts about how the world is unfair and how I wish things were different. And my perfectionist brain still makes me judge myself for having any of those anger feelings to begin with because I shouldn't be angry. That's not allowed. There is no denying that that is the message. I have been trying to cultivate empathy for myself lately when I feel anger instead of judgment because, as I mentioned earlier, it's really hard for empathy to meet anger. It is so much easier to feed the anger or try to hide the anger, but that doesn't work. What does work is space to actually feel and process and move forward. And awareness is key. What does anger feel like to you? For me, it feels like heat in my face and neck. My brain feels like it's going to pop out of my head, and I feel tension behind my eyes and in my shoulders. I feel like I want to shake or run or jump. Once you know you're feeling angry, label it. And it's best to try and be honest about the intensity. If you're actually enraged, but you say that you're just annoyed, then you're still trying to stuff the anger. That doesn't work. Then take space, physical and mental. This sometimes isn't possible right away, in the moment. In fact, much of the time, you may need to use other strategies to keep calm, even if you are feeling angry. Sometimes we may still need to stuff the anger, but it is so beneficial to come back to it and give it space when you can. Breathe, meditate, brain dump in a journal, drink some water, move your body, separate yourself from the situation or person that you're associating with the anger. Tune into your thoughts and see what they have to tell you. Why do you feel angry? What unfairness is your brain trying to alert you to? Do you feel threatened or judged, and why? Is it possible that you're using your anger to protect yourself from any other feelings? And I'll be honest, this work is really, really hard. I have had so many imposter syndrome feelings even writing this episode because I am far from an expert when it comes to my relationship with anger. As an Enneagram Type 1 with a dominant 9 wing, I constantly wrestle with feelings of anger and my desire to quell them at all costs. I am not good at it. My anger gets the best of me a lot, and it makes me say, do, and act in ways that I don't really love. I have a long way to go before I have fully ironed out my relationship with anger. But it would be pretty perfectionistic of me to avoid writing an episode about something just because I think I'm not perfect enough at it yet. And I also know that a big part of my struggles with anger are because of my perfectionistic brain patterns telling me that my anger is wrong and then judging myself for the feeling. And if you know that feeling, if you also struggle, know that you are not alone. Your anger is there for a reason, and it's trying to tell you something. Shoving it down only makes it burst out later, usually at yourself and at people you love and care about, which is what we were probably trying to avoid in the first place. So perhaps allowing it and processing it truly is better, even if it isn't, quote unquote, perfect. I opened today's episode with a quote attributed to Aristotle, and honestly, it's probably one of the most relatable things I've ever read. Anybody can become angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person and to the right degree and at the right time and for the right purpose and in the right way, that is not within everybody's power and is not easy. There is so much perfectionistic pressure in our society to always be happy and pleasant. Being angry does not fit that bill. And if you absolutely must be angry, well, then here are all the caveats. So, understandably, most of us just opt out. It's a hot mess. If you also have a complicated relationship with anger, I see you. I understand. And remember, you're allowed to be you. And anger on some level will always be a part of that. And that's okay. You're okay. You're good enough. Thank you for listening today, fellow perfectionists. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more perfectionism-related content and to help the channel grow. If these episodes are resonating with you and you think they might resonate with others, please feel free to share it as well. Until next time, fellow perfectionists.